What's going on, everybody? This is going to sound very different, especially with me having to edit it later on. But welcome to the Ace Podcast, where we talk all things art, culture, and entertainment, but more specifically pop culture entertainment. I am Will, the greatest, the host of this show. It's my show. This is kind of a full, kind of a mini episode. I wanted to put something out. I haven't been able to really put a lot of time into making content as much like the past week and a half. I've been slacking on my YouTube stuff, and I got a bunch of stuff coming up the pipeline with that. Just having a life and having a job, a big boy job, and trying to focus on bills and things of that nature, trying to get those handled, and also trying to coordinate with the guys and my own personal life and schedule and blah, 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 blah. So that's why I haven't posted in a little bit, but I do want to try and get this up on YouTube. And so hopefully by the time you're watching this, it will be the day that that Zack Snyder's Justice League comes out, because there was no Snyder cut. This is Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's different to edit. So I initially kind of wanted to just give my thoughts about that, but I may actually delve into some other topics. And I think next time we do an episode, we'll give a more thorough breakdown, and I'll have more of the guys on, and it'll be fun. Everyone will be jazzed with all of it. Okay? All right. Without further ado, let me give my early thoughts. I have yet to watch the Snyder Cut. As I speak, it's probably either released. I know it's already leaked online on torrent sites and stuff like that. I am intending to watch it Sunday with a friend of mine. I know Nick and Aaron have already seen it, and they're kind of given their non-spoiler thoughts in our separate conversation group. And they said I think they like it as much. Aaron and I believe Marvel Luke have all seen the original Justice League, and a couple of them are like, oh, I want to go in and watch the old one. And I have this weird thing where I don't rewatch a lot of movies because I typically remember what happens, especially movies I'm not that fond of. I usually remember them pretty well, so it's like I'm not. I have to really, really like a movie in order to rewatch it multiple times. I have to really, really like it or really have an emotional response to it. Like Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, I only watched twice in theaters because I'm a stan. I'm a simp for dinosaurs, even though that movie sucks. The original Jurassic World, I saw that 3 times. I've watched American Psycho multiple times. There's even some of my favorite movies of all time I haven't watched multiple times. I own Annihilation, and I haven't watched that multiple times. But yeah. So on to my pre-thoughts about it. And I really kind of wanted to get these on and out there. I remember I actually did a vlog before I saw Justice League, talking about the fact that I don't particularly like Batman and Superman as characters. I still kind of feel that way. But I always do contend that writing is the saving grace. And I was watching Full Fat Cow's video of him talking about Man of Steel. And I will say what I am going to do is I think I'm going to give Man of Steel another watch. I haven't watched it since I started college. So that's probably about 2013, 2014. So it's been almost literally a decade. At least it's been way over 5 years since I've sat down and watched that movie. And I remember liking it at the time, but then as time went on, I started to dislike it more and more. But I'll give it another shot. As I've looked into, and I think he makes a solid argument for why his opinion has changed. And I'm coming to realize that what I don't like about Zack as a creative figurehead, and this is also a problem that extends to maybe some other directors too, not just within comic books, but within adaptation of mediums when it comes to film, and in less so cases animation. Animation, I think, is a little bit easier to go from one to the other. But I don't like subversion of character unless it's really, really explicitly defined that this is so far off from the interpretation that it's just moving radically. The theme of it is radically different for a purpose. So like I can probably contend with subversion of character if there's a thematic reasoning for it. And even still, that doesn't mean I'm always going to love it. So in Zack Snyder's case, I'm very much one of subversion of narrative, or subversion of environment, or essentially story. So, but I want the core of the character to maintain the same, but the surroundings and the context around it are what changes. And I realized that as I've grown to really, really fond of Superman and Lois. I really enjoyed that. That's the best DCCW show I've seen in years. It's the best CW show I've seen it's probably since Crazy Ex-Girlfriend ended, or maybe Jane the Virgin. I'll say Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because that's actually a really, really good show and you should watch it. And we also have some CW news, but we'll get to that later. Back to what I was saying about subversion of narrative and environment. Zack has a passion for these characters. I do believe that. I don't think he's just like some heartless goblin but I think he wants to, the story, I don't know if it's that he doesn't get it. I think he's using them for a different purpose than what we usually expect them to be. And I think this also kind of partially ties into why I don't. My favorite DC characters, like I realize when I look at the Justice League, none of them are really characters that I'm that crazy for. And I don't even mean just in the live action stuff. I just kind of mean in general. Like, I love Static Shock, but like my favorite Batman is Terry McGinnis. My favorite Man family member is Karen Star Power Girl. And I've read a lot of her comics from her, was it her Gail Simone run? I think it was Gail Simone's run. I think who did that. It was either that or the people that did Harley Quinn. Maybe they did the art. Terry, I'm blanking on the name. That aside, going back to Zack and his adaptations of these characters. Are they his own? Yes. Are they an Elseworld? Yes. I think the issue is, at the time when they came out, I think every time you get a reboot of a character, you kind of, for a little bit, you have to introduce that character as we know them to be, as we know the spirit and essence of that character to be, before you go into the subversion. I think that's why a lot of people didn't take to Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi, because it had been such I feel like 10 years, 10 to 15 years is a brand new generation, in terms of like adapting a character. So you have to kind of reintroduce that character as the way people know it. And then from there, you can go into making changes that make it your own. And I think the reason Zack catches a lot of flack is not only is his viewpoint of these characters very, very mystic. He very much sees DC characters as like these Grecian Roman equivalent gods, which I think is cool, because I do follow a bit of the logic that, yeah, comic books are kind of like our modern Greek mythology of these characters with these insane stories and epic feats and all these different interpretations of them from around the world. And I do think that's great. I think, though, in the process of it is hard for a lot of audience members to connect to deified entities. It's like no one really looks at the legends and myths of Zeus and Hera and is like, oh, I connect with that. They connect more with the grounded stories, or more so grounded character adventures of things like Achilles, and even to an extent like Hercules, Perseus, Odysseus, and his travels and sails and adventures. Those are a lot easier to connect with than that of like the righteous gods with all of the might and power. And so Zack I don't think, at least for me, I don't think he well executed the kind of transition that we needed, and making kind of the Luke Skywalker comparison here, because I kind of want to stay away from the Marvel ones to an extent, because I definitely do probably have some bias there. I admit that. But going to the Luke one, spoilers for The Mandalorian season 2. When Luke showed up at the end, that actually made The Last Jedi, his appearance, stronger for me, because we got to see that middle of Luke being a badass, that thing that everybody wanted to see. And so when I talk about that every generation needs a proper adaptation of a character before you go into the subversion of that character for, be it thematic or narrative purposes, I don't think we got that. The gap between Superman Returns and Man of Steel was, what was it? Not 10 years, 2006 and 2013, almost 10 years. But long enough that like when you reboot it, you need a proper adaptation of it. And I think Superman and Lois does that great, actually. And so kind of more so to compare those two, comparing, I said in my reaction that Tyler Hoechlin and, what's her name? Elizabeth Tulloch, are not who I would like see if I'm thinking of Clark Kent and Lois Lane. But when I see them in the show, when I see how they act, when I see how they're written, when I see how they interact with the world around them, they embody those characters. And I don't exactly get that same energy when Zack Snyder creates this world for his adaptation of Lois Lane and Clark Kent. I'm not even going to go into the fucking hair thing. People know how I feel about that. But I don't as much get that heart and that hardiness and that tenacity from his Lois Lane, and I don't really get that. I don't get as much that kind of hometown, guy who realizes he has the powers of a god but tries to fit in. I don't get the awkwardness of Clark Kent, and I don't get that kind of dichotomy with that and Superman, who's like this brave big blue Boy Scout, this nice guy, this like giant flying teddy bear with the power of like 10 men. I get it in spurts a little bit when I think about Man of Steel and maybe a little bit of BVS, but overall I don't get that kind of sensation that I do from a Hoechlin. And I think the thing is, had we had like a Superman and Lois proper when Man of Steel came out, I think there would have been less complaints about Zack's interpretation, because there would have been another one to go to. Spider-Man kind of ran into this a little bit when like all of his adaptations at the same time were all about him being in high school. This was kind of part of the trouble that Miles Morales ran into when he first premiered, is because in his universe Peter Parker died, so people would be like, oh well, I still want my Peter Parker stories, and then Superior was going on at the same time, and that was I actually, Superior is a storyline that I like in concept, not so much in execution, because I don't like the premise of Otto Octavius stealing his body. I feel like it should have been a different villain. That aside, so you have Peter Parker dead in the main line and in the other most popular alternative universe, so no one has a version of Peter that's like core Peter. And I felt like it was kind of the same for Superman. When Zack's version came out, and that's the new Superman, it kind of, things were kind of mixed. You don't get, and which is funny because he grew up on Fleischer Superman, which is an awesome depiction of Superman, like one of the best, like Ruben Fleischer's version, Bruce Timm's version, and I'd say not Dean Cain, The one from the 70s. Damn it, I'm gonna be fucking killed for not remembering. But the one from the 70s, you know the one. The Richard Donner interpretation. Those are like three of the most iconic versions. And I guess to an extent you can say Smallville, but he never wore the fucking suit, so does he really count? So there was nothing to kind of balance out with that, you know, in terms of like the live action department, you know, comparing comics to live action is a big leap, but nonetheless, and his Batman, what his Batman is missing is what Luke missed with The Last Jedi. We see the bitter, old, crotchety, seasoned Batman. The one, we see him at the end of his limits. We see the struggles. We see the guy that's branding criminals, but we don't see the in-between of what led to that. We don't get a young, we don't get the Christian Bale Bruce Wayne, which I think if you wanted to retcon it, I don't think it would break canon that well. It would now because we have Jared Leto's Joker. It almost would have been fine, but you know, nonetheless, the thing with his Batman is you don't get that middle. Had we had a bit of I think, you know, at least MCU Spider-Man got a little bit of that middle. Say what you will about like his adaptation in his solo movies. I think his Civil War interpretation is perfect. And I think that like, yeah, that's classic Spidey, has the quips, has the smarts, has the hubris, and you get the great power, great responsibility without him even directly saying it. I think that's probably the best interpretation, and it's only like 12 minutes. So you don't get, same way that you didn't get young Luke being peak Jedi badass. We don't get to see that. We just jump cut to grim Jesus Christ figure Superman to crotchety old Batman fighting that Superman, who's essentially like a flying deity in the eyes of the audience, at least to me. And you don't get to see Batman in his prime. You don't get to see him as full-on balance of ninja, martial arts detective Batman who wears the mask of Bruce Wayne, which might be a little bit more of what this new Batman is doing, where he's a little earlier in his career. But I think what we really need is that middle. It's that Bruce Timm era, you know? So before, like, that's one of the things that makes Batman Beyond strong, is you can't just jump to doing Batman Beyond. You had, like, 8 years of Batman the Animated Series, and then the new Batman Adventures, where you get, like, Batman, Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl. You get a whole Bat family. You get a whole group of villains. You get to see that, and then you get to see old, bitter Bruce. You get to see him sitting on his hill alone with Ace the Bat Hound and Terry McGinnis fighting off that biker gang, and he's like, you know what, I think you're going to make a good apprentice. Here, I'll give you the suit. Then you see him transition to his own kind of Oracle type role. So you see this Batman, but you only hear about it's show don't tell. You know? And we don't really get to see the middle part of Ben Affleck, which is a shame because Ben Affleck would be a fantastic Batman. He should have been a fantastic Batman. I'm still upset that we'll never get to. I wish we could at least see what his scripts were like of him with that solo Deathstroke movie. I thought that would have probably been fantastic, especially with Matt Reeves directing it. Would have been great. But now we got this new one, and yeah, okay. Jury's still out on that. But nonetheless, we don't get Prime Batman. We don't get to see, like, we get a little bit of the Playboy aspect of him in BVS, but we don't get Batman in his prime. And I think that's the thing, is Zack skips a lot of these things. He skips a lot of these aspects of the storytelling and the character, and even in his extended cuts, you know, they add more to the characters, but I don't think they add what people really want out of them. You know, you gotta show the best of these characters before you can show the worst of them. And I still do have issues with, like, Pa Kent it's like, Dad, should I just let them drown? And him saying maybe. And I can understand why Zack makes a lot of the decisions that he does, but the messaging gets muddled by the execution. The final product does more damage than the intent of the point he's trying to get across. And that's what really, I think, damages a lot of his storytelling with these characters. Like talking about Pa Kent saying maybe, it's, in my interpretation, it's supposed to be a human feeling of doubt. And I think the problem is there was no counterbalance to that. Had he shown on his face that he had doubt, but then he decided, he's like, you know what, Clark, that's a tough decision, but I think you made the right one. Or had he said maybe, and Martha Kent goes, no, Clark, you did the right thing, to balance it out, to balance out that guilt with letting Clark know that, yes, there are going to be times where you have to make tough decisions about being aware of your presence as a superpowered person versus, like, the difference, but the dichotomy between being a man and being a god amongst men, and what that can mean and impact for your life. There's a lot of different implications there. There's a lot to explore there, especially with Superman. But the execution was weak. Talking about the killing of Zod. Like, I think Full Fat makes a really great point, talking about how and I actually kind of forgot this from Man of Steel, most of the Kryptonians are essentially space Tetsu babies. Clark is the first natural birth in an extremely long time. So Zod's main purpose is to be a warrior, is to be a leader for the Kryptonians and be a general and keep the planet on its trajectory of success. But when you don't have no planet, you can't fulfill your duty, and you're just filled with this rage, and you have to lash out and let it out. And I think to an extent that does kind of come across in the movie. I just don't think it may come across as explicitly well as it could have, but which is, that just comes down to interpretation. Talking about, I lost my train of thought, fuck. Talking about Zod and Clark and his parents. Let's talk about the Martha thing. The Martha thing could have worked. The Martha thing could have easily worked. The Martha thing is Superman showing to Batman that he has a piece of humanity with him because he was raised by human parents. But no one talks like that, Zach. No one just says, gotta save my mom as I tell you by her first name. If he had said, it's a simple change. It's like, my mom. I've gotta save my mom. You don't have to say fucking Martha. Say my mom, my mommy. My mom's in danger, But yeah, by happenstance, Martha happens to be the same name, so I get the point he was trying to get across. Like, even if he was saying, it's like, mother, my mother Martha, and then it's like, oh, Martha, who the fuck is Martha? Why did you say Martha? It's like, Martha is my mother's name. But again, you got to rework the scene. And I'm also realizing that there's something up with the writing in these movies. Because Zack is the director, but he's not the only one doing, like, the writing on these. I think for, like, Zack Snyder, for ZSJL, this is the first time he really has a writing credit. The other ones have been, like, Terrio and Nolan did Man of Steel, and I think Terrio and someone else did BVS, and that movie's a train wreck and a half. Jesse Eisenberg is just a major miscast. That's another thing, is he's very open-minded with his casting, but also very controversial. Like, he has some that hit the nail on the head, and then some that are just misses, in my opinion. Like, Jesse Eisenberg is just not who I would pick for. I'm not saying he can't be a good Lex. He's just not a good Lex for the Zack Snyder version. He just does not fit, especially with him standing by, like, Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent, and he's, like, being towered over by these behemoth ass men. It just looks weird. Yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm gonna be very open minded to what he does with Justice League. Like, I'm going to try and avoid watching reviews. I don't know. I might still watch a couple, but I'm going to try my hardest to not let them sway my opinion. I'm going to try hard not to compare them to any sort of Marvel properties because I don't think that's fair. Zack has been given a very rare opportunity in Hollywood to complete his vision after a lot of very strange, I guess you could say, to an extent, executive meddling. And it's I'm gonna be honest, it's weird to me. This is a case where I'm like, why is this the hill that people were dying on the sword for? I sometimes wish I could see what it is that other people see, not even in these characters, but in Zack's adaptation. Because, like, if I said I didn't have a favorite version of these characters, I'd be fucking lying to you. I have a favorite, adaptation of all of these, and it's called Earth One. And Zack takes a lot of his inspiration for Man of Steel from Earth One. I just by happenstance, I heard about the book. I picked it up years ago, fell madly in love with it. I'm like, this is what Zack and I guess Chris Terrio and Nolan were kind of trying to do with Man of Steel, and in my opinion, it failed. It has a great balance of like Clark as a farm boy trying to hide himself, and the difference between Clark as Clark Kent and then that mask in comparison to Superman and the things he does to try and essentially humanize himself in the eyes of people, to not stick out, but to know that like to be Superman is so different, and that it is that people look to him as a being of hope. Also, I do hate that line. It's like, what's the S stand for? It stands for hope. Shut the fuck! Oh my god, I hate that line. Oh, it's so stupid. What's the S for? It's the House of L, but it's S. Stands for super. Stands for save the day. Stands for hope. Fuck you. Man, I hate that line. Some people might like that. More power to you. God bless. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a shot. I like I do with everything DC, in my opinion, until Superman and Lois Shazam was the best Superman movie I'd seen in years. I love that fucking movie. Favorite DCE movie. It's so damn good. I need to rewatch that. I think I saw that one 2 or 3 times. I really like Shazam. I need to buy it. But yeah, I don't get it. I don't know what it is about Zack that makes people go head over heels for him. Do I agree he's a visual director? Sure, but it's not anything that particularly catches my eye. It's nothing that I feel is particularly grabbing or interesting. Like, yeah, he does an okay job with like recreating comic panels, but like I don't like most of the costume design in the DCEU, and I've made a video about that on my own channel. You can watch that. I don't really like the colorization of things. I will say Dark or Uxas, as he'll be, looks solid. I mean, he looks like Darkseid. But then again, what's his face? Steppenwolf looks like shit. But like a complete, like he looked like shit in the original. Now he looks like, it's like a lateral type of shit lookery. They didn't make him better or worse. It's just like a different type of shitty. Like he looked bad in the original, and now he looks bad here in a completely different way. And I look at him in the comics, I'm like, what? Where did we miss? Zack really likes to alien. When they say alien, he means that shit. Like he likes to make stuff look as fucking weird as possible. Don't like a Superman suit. I'm not a big fan of the Dark Knight Rises aesthetic. Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns kind of aesthetic. So like he's really into Frank Miller books. I kind of Frank Miller, isn't the worst writer. He's a solid writer. Like his Daredevil Born Again is fantastic. It's a great comic. Rough looking art at times, but great comic, The story of Dark Knight Returns is very interesting. I don't like the design of like the Fat Bat. I don't like his I can understand his decisions for the way he conducts his films. I just don't like it. And as a result, I can't connect with why people love these so much. And the reason I love Superman and Lois is because it does what I was talking about earlier. It's a subversion of the narrative. It's a shift in the narrative, but the characters are still the same. So we have Superman and Lois. We have these characters. We know how they work. We know what people want of them. But let's put them in different scenarios that will challenge the characters. And then from there, you can do weird shit with them thematically to tell different stories. Let's have Superman be a father of a half Kryptonian child who also has social anxiety disorder, and they live in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Kansas. And they have to deal with a lot of problems that Superman can't just punch away. You can't punch away fatherhood. You can't bench press, capitalism. Doesn't work like that. So what do you do to what do you give to the man who has everything? What is the enemy of the guy that can defeat any physical threat? You attack him psychologically. You attack him emotionally. You attack him financially. You attack him socially. You challenge Superman as a character, as this paragon, as Zack would see him, as this godlike being, to be like, okay, you're a god that wants to exist amongst men in terms of like physical capabilities, saving people from physical threats. Let's talk about emotional things. What does it mean for a man who is essentially adopted to be a father? What does that mean to you? What does parenting look like for Clark Kent? What is the difference between Clark Kent in Metropolis and Clark Kent in Smallville as a grown man? Those are the things I like about it, amongst many other things. Like the show just looks good, has a good story that's really interesting, introducing some fascinating new characters and stuff like that. So it's a great show. So I think now with Superman and Lois, there is a live action version of Superman that I think everyone can enjoy, that's a lot more core to the character. And now that we have that, I think it's easier now to navigate with Zack's version. But yeah, I can only hope the movie is decent. I'm trying to go in with no expectations. I am not rewatching the Joss Whedon version because I do not care to. I don't. I watched it. I'm like, that was mid. It was okay. Didn't love it. Didn't hate it. There were some moments I liked. Actually, my favorite moment from the movie is when Superman whipped the entire Justice League's ass. I actually really did like that scene, and seeing Superman be Superman was nice. But yeah, Nick and Aaron say they enjoyed it enough. I'm just gonna try and let my bias not tailor my end judgment too much. I'm gonna stay open for Zack. I'll probably try and I'll give this a shot. I will give his Army of the Dead movie a shot because that looks like, it looks interesting, I guess. I don't know. Something about the way he handles narratives just doesn't. Narratives and visuals, it just doesn't sit well with me. But I'm willing to have my mind changed. I want to give him a chance. To prove me wrong. He's been given a very rare opportunity in Hollywood, man. I don't know. The circumstances of why are tragic, but it is just another thing of just like, why him? What was it? Because the fan outcry was prominent, but like this and Sonic the Hedgehog, Hollywood is really fucking changing, bro. Like it's really crazy to me that Sonic the Hedgehog shit happened in the first place. Because like I didn't hate the original design, but I will admit the second one was leaps and bounds better. oh my goodness, it was incredibly so much better. Like the first one, I'm like, oh wow, that's a little strange, but whatever. The second one was much better. So who knows? Maybe we'll get a bit of a Sonic the Hedgehog treatment. Who knows? I can only, hope for the best from Zach. Hope I at least am entertained. But yep. So I'm gonna leave that where it is. But on that note, that's gonna do it for this week's episode. We don't have any questions this week, but feel free to send in questions to our Instagram at Atlas Comics Elite, ATLAS Comics Elite on Instagram. I have been your host, Will, aka Will the Greatest. Send us some questions. Don't forget to like the show and follow the show and share the show and leave a comment and leave a question, and we'll talk about it here on the show. And on that note, I hope you have a good one. And I will see you in the next episode. No Dre. Peace.